r/AskReddit. Cops of Reddit. What's the most bullshit sounding excuse you got that actually turned out to be true? I went to a disturbance at a backyard BBQ once. Turns out it was a bunch of Roma gypsies. As I was trying to figure out what was going on, I had some old lady approach me and want to talk to me off to the side. She told me she was an informant for the FBI and that if I left, she would be able to get some information on a matter the FBI was interested in. I rolled my eyes and thanked her and said I would be out of there as soon as I could make sure there was no violence going on. Anyway, I determined it was just verbal, so I cleared the call and went back in service. About 15 to 30 minutes later, dispatch radioed me to head back to the station. I got there and got a message to call some FBI field office and ask for a certain agent. I called and sure as hit this agent said he understood I spoke with his informant and wanted to know everything she told me. Blew my mind. Crazy quick. How did the FBI and the field office know so quickly? It's the FBI. I was driving with my fiance and we went through a roadblock where they checked registration and hit. And we get to the cops and they ask for our registration. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, so I open up the glove box and right there is a clear, unmarked baggie filled to the brim with catnip. I completely forgot it was there and just froze. Wide-eyed. I turned to look at the cop shining his light through my open window and he's frozen too. Just staring at the baggie with this look on his face like really? I just started immediately professing OMG I swear to God this is catnip. You can take it and smell it or test it or whatever like I swear. And at this point it's just so ridiculous that I start cracking up. And the cop takes it and reasonably deduces I'm telling the truth. And he starts laughing and calls his partner over and tells her what happened and they both just cackled away for a minute and sent us on our way. Cat weed. Good thing they weren't cat cops. You mean claw enforcement? Mid-July in like 2008. Young kid going 93 in a 55. I swing and he immediately pulls over. Approaching the car. His first words, before I can even start speaking. My dog died. He hung himself. I gotta get back before my mom gets home. What point JPG. Anyway. He calls other family members. His aunt, uncle and 2 cousins come out to the stop and between all their sobbing, they verify that the dog had actually hopped over the fence on a leash/runner and couldn't get back over. Everyone's crying now. They showed me a photo on their phone. Apparently they found the dog and called the kid at work and he just left. I didn't even bother verifying further than that. Cousin drove the kid's car back so they could take care of the dog and prepare for mom. Some said that I should have wrote him. But losing an animal sucks enough. He knew he ducked up and adding financial burden to him wasn't going to help him or me. I'm glad there are cops out there who understand both how horrible losing a dog is and how financially hard it is to get a ticket as a kid. Insurance is already too high. Of course kids should be more careful and it's not the cops' fault they got pulled over. But you did the right thing in this scenario. It's also not even a financial cost at that point. Almost 50 over is going to be a jailable offense pretty much everywhere. I got pulled over for driving to school at 10 AM. The cop wanted to know why I was skipping school. I explained that a little town's girls basketball team just won state and since the game was so far away they let us start that day at 10:30 AM. He followed me all the way to the school so he could ask the principal. I still don't know what was illegal about driving to school at 10 AM. But he was kind of a douche. Where do you live? North Korea? Hong Kong. Okay, so I'm going to tell my crazy story as the person on behind the wheel. My uncle was divorcing his terrible wife. He was no saint, but definitely on the right side of their divorce. The wife was still on the paperwork to take their 2 kids out of the school, even though my uncle had temporary custody while the courts did their thing. She had previously threatened to take them both and just run away. So I don't know why she was still on the paperwork. On picture day that year, she showed up to the school and signed both kids out and disappeared. I was not involved in the crazy process of calling the police and tracking the kids down. But I was pulled from school that day because I had my driver's license and could be an extra pair of hands. They managed to find the kids and they were turned over my grandmother and mom. but my niece was distraught that she would be missing picture day. It was her first time away from her terrible mother, and she was finally allowed to be a cheerleader. A dream in her tiny eyes. So, me having my car and nothing else better to do, offered to take her back to the school. My mom got the school to agree to keep the person there a little longer, but it was going to be by the skin of our teeth that we would make it, as this was rural. Okay. We got in the car and I blasted down those dirt roads doing approximate 70 in a 35. Not a good decision on my part, but I was an anxiety-ridden 17-year-old dealing with a nasty divorce and kidnapping for the first time in my life. We, of course, get pulled over. I'm freaking out cause I can't afford that bad of ticket and all the crap that was coming in that day. The cop listened to the story and ignored my barely held in tears and said he would let us off with a warning because he believed the story. And the only reason he believed the story was that he had just pulled over my uncle going the same speed the opposite direction on the same road and go the same story. Edit, my cousin, not my niece. She has that sound in her name and I always get it wrong. And I have not idea if my uncle got a ticket, as I was too self-absorbed at 17 to consider asking him. One hell of a story. Not a cop, but heard it said to one M's. Go to a woman who has been attacked by her cat. Her injuries were crazy. Covered in blood. Her scalp is literally shredded. Huge lacerations, etc. I know cats are known to do some damage, but the story wasn't fitting, and she was so sketchy about anyone going in her house. Adamantly refuses to let anyone inside because she thinks they are going to take away her cat. He didn't mean to. He was just excited by the birds. Her cat was a lynx. Oh man. I used to work at a slightly sketchy grooming place and we had a lady bring her bobcat kitten in. She wanted us to socialize it more than bathe it. So we spent an hour every few weeks just handling it and trying to teach it that clawing us was bad. She eventually took it to Montana to get it declawed and stopped coming shortly after that. So not sure what happened to her or the cat. Sucks that people want to try to keep wild animals though. She eventually took it to Montana to get it declawed. Duck these people. I was the one with the excuse. Forgot my keys at friend's place before going out drinking that night. Get home at 2 AM. No keys. Only one of our windows didn't have ghetto bars, so I took the screen out and starting pushing/smacking it up. Locks were on the sides only providing friction. As I'm halfway in, I just feel whump. Got tackled into the house. The officer was still outside, holding on to my ankles. I look up and just said, "I'm astonished by your response time. I actually live here. Let me get up, unlock the door, and give you my ID." So I did, and he stares at it for a second, then says sorry and sprints off to look for the person they were actually in the area looking for. My dad once got woken up in the middle of the night by some noise on his first floor balcony of his then apartment. So he went to check it out, to find a cop on his balcony, and got scared hitless. Turns out his neighbor was hoarding parking tickets and whatnot he refused to pay, and this got so out of hand they had an arrest warrant for him. The cop on the balcony just miscounted and mistook my dad's balcony for his neighbor's. Evening officer. I couldn't help but notice you're breaking into my apartment. How can I assist? My dad is an officer and he pulled someone over for speeding and running a red light, and they said their breast implant burst. He called IMS to rush them to the hospital, and turned out it did, and it's actually very dangerous if they leak. Edit. Thanks for my first silver. Edit. It's not actually as dangerous as I thought. Thanks to the plastic surgeons that commented. Do you know why I pulled you over? My boob exploded. One of the few occasions where calm your tits could be taken literally. Not a cop. Family friend was. Pulled a guy over who was speeding profusely. Guy was obviously disheveled. He said he was headed to the hospital because he had a tick on his peen. Cop was confused, but he escorted him there, then waited in the lobby to check on him/see if he was blowing smoke. After a while, he asked the desk what was going on. Why it took so long to take a tick off his peen. Her reply, "It wasn't on it. It was in it." I cringed. I don't even have a peen and I cringed. My dad was a cop and my favorite story of his goes like this. He's a young cop in a rough neighborhood. It's so late that the stoplights are flashing red, meaning treat it like a stop sign. Out of nowhere this pink caddy goes rolling through the intersection. My dad pulls him over. A big black dude was driving. The caddy had fur interior, dice in the mirror, a real pimp car, if you know what I mean. My dad goes, "Sir, do you know you ran that light back there?" And this guy says, "Officer." I do believe I got between the flashes. My dad was laughing so hard he had to let the guy go. I can just imagine the dude's thought process when he saw the flashing red light. Wait for it. Wait for it. Floor it. Not a cop, but I had a run-in with one that was really funny once. When I was 18, I was on a double date with a friend, and we stepped out of a restaurant to smoke. A cop came up and started harassing us, telling us there had been break-ins into cars in the area. Eventually, he said he needed to pat us down, and he pulled a brown paper bag out of my friend's pocket. He got a smug look on his face and asked, "So, what's in here?" Huh. My friend said, "The Emancipation Proclamation," with a completely straight face. The cop opened the bag, pulled out a small booklet, got embarrassed, and let us go. My friend had been to the Lincoln Museum earlier that day and did actually have a small copy of the Emancipation Proclamation in his pocket. That is really funny. Was that legal of the cop to pat him down though? Doesn't seem like it. No, I don't think it was at all. The cop was a jerk. I definitely would have raised hell if a cop tried to do that to me or a friend now. Former cop here. I was behind a vehicle that couldn't stay in the lane. Kept swerving, etc. It was 1 AM. And I think another drunk idiot on the road. Pull him over. Guy is a straight up asshole to me. Cursed me out, yelling at me. And I notice his speech is slurred. I get him out to car, and I can smell a fruity smell on his breath, and he has to lean against the car for support. I ask him how much he had to drink, and he tells me to duck off. By this point I'm ready to bring him in for a DUI. But I just had a feeling something wasn't right. I called EMS to come check him. Blood sugar was at 40. Not drunk. Just a diabetic. If I would have arrested him, he probably would have died before I finished the paperwork. Go with your gut if something doesn't seem right. I was doing security at an event one night where alcohol was being served. My partner and I found someone laying in an alley who had fallen and was cut on her forehead. I'm ashamed to say that, partly because she was native Canadian. I figured she was just drunk. In the totality of the circumstances, with it being at night where alcohol was being served, it just added to the whole idea. But as my partner and I helped her to her feet, we found her insulin kit on the ground beside her. She was unable to speak clearly, but seemed fixated on it, and we helped her walk down the alley to an ambulance. The paramedic also assumed she was just a drunk until we were able to finally convince him that we thought she was in a diabetic emergency. Turned out she was. Like I said, it was a real eye-opener about the inherent racism that sometimes we carry with us that can change how we see people. Yes, in the totality of the situation it wasn't completely unacceptable to expect that she was just drunk, but I do now recognize the racist component of my view of her when I first saw her. Edit, Native Canadian means Aboriginal or Indian. I didn't realize until I read the comments that I was using a confusing turn of phrase. Sorry. At first I was like, you thought she was drunk because she was Canadian? And that's racist. Turns out Native Canadian was the active word there. Signed, America. Not a cop, but I have a pretty good one. In high school some of my buddies sold weed, driving around in a car with a scale, baggies, and 4 ounces at any given time. One day T&D decided to go to a really good taco stand for lunch in between deliveries. He is driving. They are making their way downtown when he starts laughing. Did you see that? Tino. What? I'll turn around. You gotta see this. Dude. Don't get us pulled over. WTF. Chill. He makes a U-turn and turns down a street. Nothing there, so he stops in front of a random house to look around. TWTF was it? Just drive. I just saw a dude pushing a stroller with 2 wiener dogs in it. You're retarded. As soon as he started driving again, A cop car pulls up behind them and lights them up. Cop 1, what are you guys doing? Panicking a bit. I saw a guy pushing a stroller with wiener dogs in it and had to show my free. Cop 2, how come you're parked in front of this known trap house and your car smells like dope? Silence. This guy with a stroller an. Cops get out of the car. Car gets searched. They find all the hit. As they are getting loaded into the back of the cop car all handcuffed up. Cop 2 just stops. Cop 2, hey Cop 1. Look at that. Cop 1, no hit. Everyone looks up at this old guy pushing a stroller with his 2 wiener dogs poking their heads out. Cops burst out laughing. They both got charged with possession/trafficking. Good times. Edit. Wow, I've never had a comment blow up like this. Since everyone loves stories about so much, here's another one for ya. A while before the infamous wiener dog incident, he had to get new tires for his car. Brought it into a local tire shop and left it there for the day. Being the brilliant kid that he was, he left his stash in his favorite hiding spot, thinking nobody would ever find it. The hiding spot was in his spare tire compartment under the carpet in the hatchback/trunk area. The guy changing his tires over was courteous enough to make sure his spare had the manufacturer recommended amount of air pressure in it. He helped himself to a noz of high quality bud while he was in there. He was pissed. He told us about it while we were blazing that night. We all laughed. Thought it was great. He didn't. He strutted into that tire shop the next day and demanded to speak with the manager. Told him that his employee stole something from the back of his car and he wanted it back. When he refused to tell the manager what was stolen, the manager basically told him he couldn't do anything if he didn't know what it was and suggested he call the cops if he wants to escalate things. He didn't call the cops. I know a couple of people like he and this makes me laugh because they always get into trouble doing stupid hit. Edit. Quick story. Their last encounter was going to try and steal stuff from a big box store and had a change of heart halfway through. Grabbed a strawberry out of a container and walked right into a state trooper who saw it and detained them. They gave him attitude, so they were charged with petty larceny for $3.50. $120 bail apiece. Being laughed at for a week. Priceless. Sounds like something Korean Trevor would do on Trailer Park Boys. Ducking like and subscribe.